What's a really awkward situation that everyone can relate with? Saying hello or how are you to somebody and getting 100% ignored. Worse when someone else you know is there too and notices you getting ignored. That's when I just say good talk. Helps me feel like I save face just a bit. Ever drag your shoe across a tile floor and have it make a loud, wet, fart sound, so everyone in the room looks at you? Then you insist it was your shoe and try to make the sound again, but nothing happens? Yeah, that. And leather couches. And then you try to keep moving around to replicate it to show everyone that it's actually the couch, but it never does, so you're just sitting there avoiding eye contact. No, never happened to me. When you've had multiple interactions with someone, but you can't remember their name, but it's gone too far to admit you've forgotten it, so you just have to call them love or mate forever. I met this guy in my math class at the beginning of the semester and I never caught his name. We became friends and now it's the end of the semester and I still don't know his name. Not sure how to ask. I once got set up on a blind date by a friend. The guy was her brother. I unfortunately didn't catch his name, though. So when he shows up to pick me up, I'm like, you must be Elaine's brother. I'm Mamak at 13 hoping he'd say his name. He didn't. We dated a few weeks before I saw a bottle for his asthma meds in his car and got his name from that. That was basically every single class in university. Day 1. Sit near guy. Make eye contact. Smile and nod and say hello. Day 5. We continue to sit in the same spot, so now we're friends. Make small talk every day. Confirm exam, assignment dates, etc. Day 20. Realize that we never formally introduced ourselves and I don't know their name. Being at a friend's house as a kid and the friend's mother starts yelling at your friend. Being at a friend's house as a kid and the friend's father walks in only wearing underwear. The opposite as well. Having a friend over and your parents do this. Or worse, your parents try and involve your friend in the argument asking them if they would do that. Would their parents put up with it? So fricked up. My mum would do that. She would also try to manipulate my best friend into taking her side, making me do the thing that my mum wanted me to do. To this day my best friend will still tell people that my mum is crazy. When you think someone waves at you so you wave back, but they were waving at someone behind you. Just pretend you wave at someone behind them. Then the person behind them would wave back at you, but you should pretend to wave at the person behind them. And so on and so forth. Until everyone is uncomfortable and just go home. Not long ago at church we were asked to turn and greet people. I turned around and the guy said hi to me and stuck his hand out to shake. I went for it and realized he was talking to the woman beside me. She and I both ended up with a hand in his hand at the same time trying to shake it. They both looked at me and I quickly turned around and pretended it didn't happen, which made it more awkward. And then rest of the service I couldn't stop laughing about it. This is standard for me. Awkward church laughter is the worst, especially if you're trapped between people and can't excuse yourself to leave and get a handle on it privately. Also particularly bad if it happens during a funeral. When you're finishing up at the checkout and the cashier puts the notes on top of the receipt and then coins on top of that. Then the next person steps up and you're fumbling, trying to disassemble the stack in your hand, gather your shopping, say thanks and move away at the same time. When I was a cashier I made it a point to hand them their coin, hand them their currency, and unless requested otherwise, I would put the receipt in the bag for this very reason. Same here. A manager taught me that. I was so annoyed with him at the time, but now I realize what a good tip it was. In the UK it's extra sucky, because you bag your groceries yourself. If you aren't quick enough you have to do all of what you mentioned as well as quickly finish the packing while everyone stares at you waiting for you to hurry. When you reply to a stranger who says hello, but then realize they were on the phone and not speaking to you. Happened to me just yesterday and I didn't get any sleep last night as I couldn't stop reliving the moment. AirPods have made this one so much more common. It's really annoying, especially if you work in retail. I used to go to college with a girl who got the same train home as me, and we would always walk to the train station together chatting. But as soon as we sat down on the train she would call one of her friends without warning and start talking to them on hands-free. So I always, every single time, thought she was talking to me and I'd reply, and she'd ignore me. Cringe every day. When you're saying goodbye to someone, and then you both end up walking in the same direction. Or when you turn and walk into a wall with people watching. Also when you realize you've forgotten something and need to turn around, but you don't want to just turn around abruptly, because that would make you look insane. So you do a little performance where you get your phone out, pretend to check a message, sort of mime aha and then turn around. Or cross the street and then turn around to throw any observers off the scent. I used to do that until I read a very similar comment on Tumblr. Now I just turn the frick around and go where I wanted to. Just want to let you know that I may have seen you do that if you did it in a mall in Boston, and I still remember it. When you're having a conversation with someone and you don't hear what they say so you ask them to repeat and they do. But you still don't hear it and ask them to repeat again and they do. And you still don't know what they said. Do you ask them to repeat again and maybe still not hear it? Pretend you heard it and nod your head and hope it's an appropriate response? Stab yourself in the eye with a pen to create a diversion and change the subject? Happens to me all the time. I think I have bad hearing maybe. Sometimes I think I have dyslexia of the ears. It's called auditory processing disorder. I always say huh, just as I've figured out what they said. When you're walking past a coworker and you've already said hello earlier, everyone's making that weird flat smile. That walk down a long hallway toward each other where you've clearly seen the other person, but they're too far away to say something. So you do the awkward look around until you get close enough to say hey and keep walking. I work in an office above a warehouse and the hallway goes the length of the entire warehouse. It's like that never-ending hotel hallway in The Shining. There are departments all along the hallway so people come out of doors from each end. It's the worst to start walking from one end and someone comes out from a door at the other and I'm just praying inside they enter into another door before we get to each other. But it never happens. We always end up crossing paths, but until that point, I'm looking everywhere, but at that person. Looking into other offices. Pulling my phone out for no reason to look at it. The only savior is when you have a box or paperwork in your hands that you can focus on and then when the other person is within 5 feet of you, say hey and keep walking. It's utter misery every time I have to go into the hallway, which is a lot. You say bye to them and then head to walk into the same direction. Glance at each other and give an awkward smile. The longest walk. When you walk out of the store empty-handed, feeling like you've just stole something. It's worse if you make eye contact with the cashier. Or worse, the security guy. And you went in the store with a bag from another one. You know it and I know it. You should go to jail. Walking through a doorway only to catch your clothes on the handle and have it slingshot you backwards. Happens only when you're angry. Same with trying to slam a door out of anger and it somehow gets magically slowed by the air resistance and it just closes a little harder than normal. Or the opposite when you're having an argument, but you're actually not heated up, but decide to close the door and the closes with the strength of 1,000 suns. Standing there while two people talk about something you don't know about. Even worse when you're wanting to leave the conversation, but feel like you need to have an excuse to leave. I have to poop and giggle. Let them figure out which is more awkward. I think you misunderstood the term for shit and giggles. When you try to contribute to a conversation and someone cuts you off multiple times, and you patiently wait for your turn to speak, even though it already was, but by the time the air is clear, the subject has already changed and what you were going to say is now irrelevant. I used to be a habitual cutter-offer when I was younger. I wasn't trying to be rude. I was just excited for what I had to say. I've reformed that behavior now, but if I notice this happening to someone else, I'll make sure to call attention to the person trying to talk. What was that, John? Or something along those lines to make sure everyone is heard. Yes. Or repeat something, like a joke, you said, which nobody heard, and everyone chimes in with laughter or agreement. That awkward moment where you and somebody else try to let each other speak, but you both try speak at the same time and just keep failing. That would be a Skype, Teams moment. It's happened to us countless times. Especially since we're all now working from home. Sorry, go ahead. Silence. When you start to tell a story in a group, but in middle of sentence realize that no one is actually listening and ever so slowly you get quiet and hope no one took notice. When they don't realize that you were getting quiet, at first you think good, nobody noticed, but seconds later you start to feel bad that nobody was really paying attention to you. Not even hearing that you were making noises, and that feels awful. And then someone says I'm listening, go on and you wanna hug them. A coworker does this and everyone loves him. I love him. He's awesome. He really pays attention to the group and provides information relative to the situation. You ever clogged a toilet in somewhere that wasn't your house? Thank guys, my inbox is now clogged with all of your oversized shit stories. Can't wait to binge read all of it. Oh man. I show up to pick her up for our first date. I asked if I could use her toilet before we left, and only had to pee. Speaking of, why the hell doesn't everyone have a plunger? It's a common item. And there really isn't a reason not to have one. Most people I know have the logic that, because clogs rarely happen, they don't bother buying a plunger. That's like not putting an alarm in a bank, because people barely break into banks nowadays. Subscribe and click the notification bell to get the best of British.